there was a commitment on the part of Homeland Security to go back and undo those things and let them be rebid. But most of us think that never really happened, that the old contracts was added to and people kept on. Am I right in that, or have you unbundled those things and you've gotten them out to so local folks can have a chance at them?
Congressman, I don't know the details of that. I'd have
So
to.
the no-bid contracts, the early ones that were put out $500 million apiece, were added up to $2 billion.
The large
Yes.
the large ITAC contracts, I think is the one you're talking about. Well, what they did was, I believe, if it's the four big ones that were awarded immediately after Katrina, where they were for to large businesses. We're in the final, I believe, still in the final closeout phase of most of those contracts. I might point out that I think roughly 70% of all the work under those four big contracts was actually done by small business, and so I think we're still in the closeout phase.
Would the gentleman yield? You said 70% of those four large contracts were performed by small businesses. What percentage was performed by local small businesses?
I do not have those numbers.
Interesting that you remember the 70%, but not the other one. Now I recognize Mr. Braley.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Certainly contract bundling was one of the principal focuses of the Small Business Fairness and Contracting Act, but another major component had to do with miscoding of contracts. And we discussed this at our earlier hearing on this issue and also during the field hearing. And one of the problems that was identified during the field hearing was that during an analysis of a list of over 15,000 Katrina-related contracts, hundreds of contracts had been identified as miscoded, 106 in the Department of Homeland Security, 79 at GSA, 71 at DOD, and totaling 259 at the relevant agencies. And Ms. Doan, let me start with you. Given the fact that the committee has identified $4.6 million in miscoded contracts, including 79 that were counted as small business contracts that were not in fact awarded to small businesses, can you explain for us how it's possible to express satisfaction with your agency's small business achievements when they include so many awards to large businesses and nonprofits?
GSA scrubbed its numbers, and we're standing by them. We can't actually certify the validity of the other agencies' data at this point in the FPDS database, but when we were alerted by the SBA that there were some significant miscoding, we identified those and we corrected them in May of 2007. So that is a very recent correction that we did. The contracting officers who are responsible for the procurements were not always the same people who are entering the data in the FPDS database. We have corrected that. And it's possible that the folks who had been entering them in were not sufficiently knowledgeable to complete the information. The contracting officers themselves from now on will be entering the coding in, and that can assure a level of validity that we didn't have previously to that. In addition to that, our Chief Acquisition Officer is going to stress the importance in our current emergency response training program that we are hosting, and they're going to stress the importance of coding at the time of the award of the contract to ensure that the data is going to be accurate.
I wasn't able to tell from your testimony whether there have been any specific changes in interagency operations and procedures in direct response to miscoding problems. Has that been implemented in any formal way other than just a directive to do the scrubbing of the numbers?
Well, I believe that actually came from the SBA, and I think the SBA has sent letters to every government agency asking them to go in and scrub their numbers because each agency is responsible for its own numbers within the database. GSA has already done the scrub of its numbers as of May 2007. I think you will also find that now that we've cleaned up the numbers, I think government-wide, but at least within GSA for 05 and 06, that allows the data that's now going to be certified for 07 to be a lot more accurate.
But getting back to my question, were there formal changes in policies and procedures within the agency to deal with the problem of miscoding other than in response to a directive from SBA?
Yes, our Chief Acquisition Officer issued a letter to all of our regional contracting officers who are responsible for performing the contract work within GSA, and I will be happy to follow up with you and the committee with the various letters and guidances that our Chief Acquisition Officer has put out to correct these issues.
We would appreciate that, and also if there is any intended or anticipated training for these contract officers on the coding problem that has been identified and to make sure that the numbers being reported going forward are accurate.
There is training that's planned, and I'll have the Chief Acquisition Officer follow up with that information, and we'll send that. I'll take responsibility for sending that over to you and the committee.
And just for the benefit of my information, who is the Chief Acquisition Officer?
I'm sorry, Molly Wilkinson, and she's our Chief Acquisition Officer for the General Services Administration.
And does she report directly to you?
She reports directly to me.
Thank you. Administrator Preston, one of the things that you talked about was the need for better cooperation among the agencies. Do you remember that in your earlier testimony? One of the things we've been dealing with a lot in terms of implementing the recommendations of the 9/11 Commission, which we just voted on yesterday, is this whole concept of intra-agency interoperability, and that is breakdowns in communication system that prevent governmental agencies from communicating effectively among each other. Based upon your unique role in dealing with a host of federal agencies and trying to reach the small business target goals pursuant to the directives from this committee and Congress, have you identified specific factors that are preventing the type of interagency communications that can lead to better outcomes for small businesses in this country?
Yeah, I think there are some. There are a number to point to. Some of it is interagency communication. Some of it, I think, is enabling the agencies to do their job better and having us give them better support as well. I think there needs to be formalized bodies that interact on these issues consistently. And we do have a consistently standing meeting with all the small business representatives at all the agencies. As I mentioned before, and I'm sorry, I don't know if you were in the room yet, either I or the deputy participate in every one of those meetings now. We get readouts. It is a terrific forum for us to raise issues. We learn a lot of things that we're not doing right, and it allows us to communicate out as well. It also gives me the ability to call people at this table if issues arise. So that's on the blocking and tackling side, and I don't know that it can happen any other way than actually having that kind of communication and that accountability with individuals. On the systemic side, I think what we are seeing is there's a much better opportunity for us, especially with some of the improvements that GSA continues to make in the federal procurement contracting system, for us to support people by giving them access to better data on who's out there. Who's available to do contracting, and then putting our people in the mix to make sure we help the agencies connect the dots. We're also looking very specifically, once again, within our agency and the productivity of our people in the field in getting in front of contracting actions and ensuring that those get to small businesses where they should.